Madam President, I rise today to speak about the urgency of passing the Student Non-Discrimination Act, which takes the same protections that children have against discrimination on the basis of race and national origin and gender and disability, and extends those protections to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender children, LGBT children. That's it. It's a simple bill. It stands for the principle that LGBT kids have a right not to be bullied just because of who they are. Now, there are people who will say, what can you do to stop bullying? Kids will be kids. Boys will be boys. I don't think that's right. Because what we're seeing in our schools today is not just teasing, it's not playground behavior. What we are seeing is more than just bullying. We're seeing discrimination. Let me explain what I mean. If a black child was referred to by a racial slur at school, would we say, kids will be kids? If a Jewish student got beat up because he wore a yarmulke to school, would we wave it off and say, boys will be boys? If a shop teacher told a female student that she didn't belong in his class, would we be fine if the school just looked the other way? No, we wouldn't. In fact, there are federal civil rights laws that are specifically designed to stop this kind of conduct. But if a gay child is relentlessly harassed by his classmates, if a principal tells a girl that she can't go to her senior prom because she wants to bring another girl as her date, or if a school just stands by as teachers, students, and other administrators refer to a transgender child not as he or she, but as it. There is no law that was written to protect those children. Our laws fail those children, and that is just wrong, but we can change that. The bullying of LGBT children in our schools has reached epidemic proportions. More than 30% of LGBT kids report missing a day of school in the previous month because they felt unsafe. Nearly 75% of LGBT students say they've been verbally harassed at school, and more than 35% of LGBT students report being physically attacked. You cannot learn if you dread going to school. It has been estimated that on average, LGBT kids comprise 40% of all homeless youth. And to be sure, family rejection is a leading factor, but LGBT kids' inability to escape verbal harassment and physical attacks makes them drop out, which makes them much more likely to be homeless. That's just unacceptable. And our children should not have to experience that kind of hate at school. And as we've seen all too often, some of them simply can't endure it. A few years ago, I met a wonderful woman named Wendy Walsh, the mother of Seth Walsh, whose photo is next to me here. Wendy told me that Seth had endured years of anti-gay harassment at school in Tehachapi, California. When he was in the 5th grade, other students started calling him gay, and as he got older, the harassment became more frequent and more abusive. By 7th grade, taunts and verbal abuse were a constant part of Seth's day. Students called him faggot, and queer. He was afraid to use the restroom or to be in the boys' locker room before gym class. Seth had always been a good student, receiving A's and B's, but as the harassment escalated, he started to get failing grades. Friends reported that he became depressed and withdrawn. Wendy desperately tried to get school district officials to do something, but her pleas were brushed aside. And in September of 2010, Seth hanged himself from a tree in his family's backyard. He was 13. Seth left a note expressing his love for families and friends, but also his anger at his school. Justin Auberg was a rising sophomore at high school in Anoka, Minnesota, my home state. Justin played the cello. In fact, he composed music for the cello. His mother, Tammy, told people that he was a, quote, sweet boy who seemed to always have a smile on his face, unquote. Justin came out to his mom when he was 13. In July of 2010, Justin hanged himself in his bedroom. His mother later learned from Justin's friends and from messages he left before his death that he had been the victim of incessant bullying at school. Justin was 15 when he died. Carl Walker Hoover was a Boy Scout and a football player for his school in Springfield, Massachusetts. But starting in the 6th grade, the kids at Carl's school started to bully and harass him for, quote, acting gay, or, quote, acting like a girl, unquote. And even though he didn't identify as LGBT, when Carl's mother, Serdina Walker, learned about the harassment, she spoke to his principal, to his teacher, and to his guidance counselor, repeatedly asking the school to intervene. But in April of 2009, Serdina found her son hanging by an extension cord on the 2nd floor of her home. In the letter Carl left behind, he said he simply couldn't take it anymore. Carl was 11 years old. Justin's, Seth's, and Carl's stories are not anomalies. They are just a few of the many tragic cases in an epidemic of school bullying against LGBT kids or kids who are perceived to be LGBT. The bill that we are debating this week is an education bill. A bill about taking the steps necessary to secure better and brighter futures for our children. It is our responsibility, not just as senators, but as adults, to protect children and to help them flourish. And children who are afraid to go to school can't get a good education. Think about the children in your life, your son or your daughter, your grandchild or your niece or nephew. And think what it must be like for a child to get up in the morning and to face the school day ahead, not with anticipation and excitement, but with anxiety and fear, with dread, and with shame. This shouldn't happen in America. In America, we have passed laws that guard against harassment in our schools on the basis of race, national origin, sex, and disability. But LGBT students face bullying and imitation without recourse. This amendment would simply provide LGBT kids with the same legal remedies available to other kids under our federal civil rights laws. It says that schools would have to listen when a parent calls and says, my child isn't safe. And that the school has to do something about it. It would ensure that LGBT kids have the same protections and not that they have the same protection, not some of the same protections as other kids. This is not a revolutionary idea, Madam President. In fact, more than a dozen states have already passed laws that protect students from discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And it is working. In states that have protections for sexual orientation and gender identity in schools, LGBT students report nearly 1/3 fewer instances of physical harassment and nearly half as many instances of physical assault as in states lacking these protections. We have come incredibly far in our understanding of LGBT people in a very short period of time, not just as a country, but as a body. In 2013, by a vote of 64 to 32, the Senate passed SNDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which would prohibit job discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. It would prohibit firing someone or harassing them at work for being gay or transgender. It would protect adults. Adults. Now it's time to protect kids. To put in place policies to ensure that a child of 11 or 13 or 15 is allowed to live their life and discover who they are, discover maybe that they're a great cellist or a first-round NFL draft pick without facing taunts and intimidation and physical violence in school. It is our responsibility as a country and as a body to protect our children. I strongly urge my colleagues to do just that by supporting the Student Non-Discrimination Act and voting for it as an amendment to this bill. Thank you, Madam President.